Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. We're going to get started here in just a second on rapid RFI responses. I am a big fan of RFIs. I've written RFIs for the win for years, and I like it, and I like to encourage people. So I'm excited to talk to you about that in today's training. Let me just kind of get some of this stuff squared away really quick. Get rid of my running caption there. If you haven't done so already, put your company name in chat, company name and core competency into the chat so others can know who you are, what you sell. Maybe there's opportunities for teaming together and going after different opportunities. I like to start the training off with a tip before we get too far into the meat of today's training. And my tip for you today is to understand this concept of the ham and garlic. And so I'm going to give you a story to put it in perspective in a second, but in RFIs, think about the ham being compelling and the garlic being convincing. So what is the ham and what is the garlic? There's this story that comes out of a book, and I can't remember the book's name at the moment, but this kid comes up to his grandma and says, hey, my dog has fleas, and I'm trying to get rid of the fleas, but I've tried everything. Tried giving him bath after bath. I've tried this thing and that thing, dog collars, can't get rid of the fleas. The fleas just stay on the dog. And the grandma says, oh, you need to give the dog garlic. That'll go into their system, and it'll kind of come through their pores, and the fleas will hate it and get off. And so the kid goes, okay, and he goes back and he tries to give the dog garlic. And I'm making the story a lot shorter, but he tries to give the dog garlic, and the dog is having none of it, right? The dog's like, no way, we're not doing that. And so the kid goes back to grandma and says, hey, the dog's not eating the garlic. I thought you said I needed to give him the garlic. She goes, oh yeah, but dogs hate garlic. You need to wrap the garlic in some ham. The dogs love ham, and they'll just gobble up the ham and get the garlic with it. So they'll gobble up what they want, and they'll get what they need in the process. And so the kid went back, needless to say, he wrapped up the garlic in the ham, the dog ate it up, the fleas were gone. And in government contracting, I want you to understand this idea that ham is what people want and garlic is what they need, in this story. And for RFIs, when we're responding, or RFPs, right, we want to make them clear and compliant, obviously, but compelling and convincing. And compelling is telling a story that makes them excited about the direction you're trying to take your customer. Convincing is showing them that you've got what it takes. And so as you move forward on there, think about making sure your responses to RFIs have both ham and garlic, both what they want and what they need moving forward. And I'll talk more about that as we go forward in the slide today. So that was just a tip as a thank you to those showing up early and on time. I really appreciate when you do that. It just gets our training going. It lets LinkedIn push the word out to other people. When I started the tip a minute ago, we were at 100 people. Now we're almost at 200 people live. So it's perfect. So let's go ahead and get started in today's training. Responding to RFIs and sources sought notices, for me, it's the best way to get into inside the wire, we call it. So for government contractors to get in the door, I often hear government contractors say, how can I meet federal buyers? How can I get into the program office? Well, literally the easiest way is to write a response to a sources sought or an RFI that catches the eye of the program office and and others in the federal buying or the federal agency, so they invite you in, right? And when you write that response, everybody who's in there is going to read it, and I'll talk more about that in a second. But one of the other things that's great about RFI responses, and I use RFI and sources sought interchangeable. You can go look at what the difference is, but very, very quickly, RFIs tend to be a lot more early and deeper in the conversation. Sources sought mostly is like, hey, we're looking for women-owned small businesses, et cetera. They're just trying to see in the industry who might respond. But RFIs theoretically is talking about trying to talk about the work, the requirements. I like to just use RFI because it's less syllables than sources sought. So RFI responses, though, when you submit them to a federal agency, they sit in that agency. They don't get it and they look at it and they chuck it in the garbage can. No, they have a formal process. Even if they don't get back to you or don't invite you to bid, it comes into a agency and goes through a formal process. They track it. They track the responses they got. They put it into a hard drive or a network drive that other people have access to, maybe other people in the contracting shop. If it goes to the program office, those people are aware of it. They're aware of you. And so sometimes those things could sit there for days, weeks, months, and years and come back and say, you know what, we were looking at this response you did a while ago, and we'd like to talk to you about it. It wasn't a fit for that other thing we had, but now it's a fit, right? And so don't think that RFI and sources sought responses that you send in are ignored, even though you might feel ignored, right? They're doing something with it. And some government buyers are more proactive with engaging industry than others. That's okay. When your response goes in, though, you are showcasing your expertise, and we'll talk more about that in a second. The other thing I want you to pay attention to as we go into today's training, and this is why I called it my rapid RFI response process, is that you should be thinking about responding to RFIs within taking 2 to 16 hours to get a response out. And literally, as you do more of those and you start using AI tools to respond to RFIs and RFPs, you should be able to get things out consistently in 8 hours or less, right? And that's the entire response, because when you have a process in place, basically it means you're going after the same type of opportunity over and over again. And when you go after the same opportunities over and over again, and you have this ability to build reusable material, then you can respond obviously much faster. So that's what we're going to be diving into today, my rapid RFI response process for small business government contractors. Largest can go ahead and use it, but I'm not really here to train the largest. They got billions of dollars. They can pay me, right? But for you small businesses who perhaps don't have a process, I'm literally going to lay it out, right? And another day I might go way more in detail, but I got 30 minutes to give you my process, and I'm going to break it down into 4 sections. The first thing I want to talk to you about is how you can make sure that you don't miss any RFI or sources sought notice that's coming out. Or for the most part, hit 90% of them. There might be some that you just don't have access to, but if you have access to it, you should never miss it again. So I'm going to talk about that first. Then I'm going to talk about what do you do when you get all these RFI and sources sought notices coming out that you're tracking on. How do you triage those RFIs in order to focus your effort on the ones that are most likely to deliver the win? We're going to go after that. One of my big things that I like to teach, and I certainly follow with my customers, is you want to write RFIs for the win. And by triaging RFIs, you're able to make sure you're focusing your energy on the ones that truly have a shot at winning. The third thing I'm going to cover down on is how to respond to RFIs. So you triaged them, decided which ones you're going to respond to. Now you want to respond to RFIs and get called back. I'm not going to sit there and talk about the paragraphs, right? That's a whole different, it's not even a training, really. That's me helping you write it. But the training, I can talk about what you should be thinking about and what you should do when you respond to get called back. That's what I want, right? When you write a sources sought and an RFI, really what we should be hoping for, the outcome of that is not going to be a contract. Could be, but it's not going to be a contract so much as an invitation to come in and tell us more, right? If you send the federal buyer, and it doesn't matter whether it's the program office or the contract shop, something compelling, convincing, then they're going to sit there and say, well, come in and tell us more. We want to explore that. And I'll tell you how to, the things you should be thinking about and how to respond to those RFIs so that you do get called back more. And then I'm going to wrap all of this up with some steps you can take to follow up after you respond to an RFI. I often hear government contractors say, hey, I responded to an RFI and then I never heard back. And literally every single person who says that to me, I could look at what they do and realize, well, you're not following up with the buyer either, right? So we're going to talk about following up, making sure you're following up, and then how do you follow up? I'm going to give you specific examples of what you should be doing after you send an RFI in. So that's what we're going to cover down. If that's what you're here to learn and that's what you're looking for me to do, just put RFIs rock in the chat. RFIs rock. By the way, really quick before I move on, I won a ton of business with RFIs. That's why I say RFIs for the win. RFIs allow you to get in there before your competitors. So I love them. And that's why I say RFIs rock. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process, especially when you think about RFIs and RFI responses, they go from A to Z. And that process is going to lead to repeatable, predictable results. That's what you want from your RFIs. You don't want to just do it and be done with it. You want to see the results. You want to be able to predict the results that you get from your effort in the RFI. And so that's what I'm going to dive into in today's training. If you haven't already subscribed to my newsletter, the Government Contracting Success Newsletter, go ahead and do that. We're almost at 14,000 subscribers. We put out good information that helps you with your government contracting activities. An example is today I just put out an article based on a training I did recently. And this article is about the 3 top, my favorite 3 FAR clauses. And these are FAR clauses that are truly to the benefit of small businesses. So there's all these FAR clauses that might be included, but these 3 are kind of unique. Well, I wrote an article, put it into the newsletter, and you get access to things like that, as well as strategy documents from the government and points of contact. So a lot of good information in there. Make sure you subscribe. The other thing is I want to say thank you to those of you who registered for training. We have well over 100 people who registered for the training, and I really appreciate that. It's a simple thank you to us to let us know that you're coming and you're interested in the training. But also, when you do this, you have this ability to network with those people who also register. And so if I register for an event, I can go in and see everybody else who's registered and be able to decide whether I want to connect with them. And if they're coming to a government contracting training like this, there's probably a good chance that I want to connect with them. Last thing is just make sure you hit the bell notification underneath my banner on my LinkedIn profile. This way you get notified of everything that I'm putting out government contracting related and you don't miss something important. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with, I got 20 minutes and I'm going to talk about 4 main things here. Never miss another RFI or sources sought notice. I have actual separate training on some of these that you can go watch. But the first thing you want to do is get into sam.gov and go in and search for RFIs. Create a saved search that you can come back to every single day. It'll take 5 minutes or less for you to do this. When you go into SAM the first time, what you want to be doing is going in there and searching for contracts, right? This training I did before will show you exactly how to do it. But basically, you're looking for contracts. The notice type is sources sought, which covers RFIs, and you just want to search for it. Oh, and the other thing is when the due date is out. So you want to look for anything that is a sources sought with a due date out in the future. When you do that, you'll be able to see all the current sources sought as of today. So you could do this literally today. Scroll through. Don't use keywords. Don't use NAICS codes. You might get 1,000 sources sought. But if you're trying to get $1 million or $5 million or $10 million out of the government, just scroll through. The reason I say this is sometimes the government doesn't put in sources sought, RFPs or whatever with the titles or descriptions you would think makes sense, or the NAICS codes. So just scroll through them all. It's called browsing. You do it, you put some music on and just go through. It'll take you an hour or 2 hours, but you do this once. And when you scroll through it, you've looked at all the RFIs. Now you can come back and take that same search, but change it and say any sources sought notice that's been modified in the last day. When you do that, you can save it as a search and come back every single day, and SAM will show you any RFIs or sources sought that have been changed in the last 24 hours. And it's a great way for you to pursue it. Again, I got a whole separate training on that. Maybe somebody will put it in the chat. Otherwise, just look at my training list. It's on my profile. The second thing you want to do is go into GovWin. They have a similar type approach in here. And I'm just using Gov. I personally use GovWin, and I like it. But there's all sorts of tools out there, right? So go find any of the tools you're paying for currently. Don't go buy new tools. But if you're already paying for any of these subscription-based tools that alert you to notifications, set up a saved search for sources sought. Sam.gov is not going to have every RFI or every sources sought that drops. It's only going to have a portion of it. GovWin will have more. Some other tools might have others. But if you have a tool, make sure you go in and figure out how to do a saved search. So the next one, number 3, is talking to your federal buyer. So I would go in and talk to a small business professional or a contracting officer, and I would ask them, I know the general process for how sources sought and market research gets done, right? I got that. How do you guys do it? How do I make sure I never miss another Army sources sought or Department of Education RFI that comes out? How do I hear about those so I get invited to participate? What do you need from me? An example is at HHS, they have their own supplier portal that's in addition to the dynamic small business search /SAM profile that you have. And so in HHS, those federal buyers, when they do market research, might go in there and invite those small businesses to participate in an RFI, not the whole industry, right? So ask your target buyer, your target agency, how do you guys do market research? How do I make sure I don't miss an RFI? Fourth way, while you're in there, and you can do this in FPDS and USA Spending, is figure out what the top contract vehicles are for your agency. Generally, it would be sufficient to just find the top 5 because you want to find the top 5 for your agency for your services and products, right? So if I do IT services, I don't need to be looking at a janitorial contract vehicle. My RFIs won't come out on that vehicle. So ask or find out what the top 5 contract vehicles are for your target agency. and then go find the contract holders. If you're not a prime contract holder, go find the prime contract holders and try to get on somebody's team and what I call an unofficial member of the team, meaning, hey, John, you guys are on Oasis, small business. Can I be on your notification list so I can track the RFIs and RFPs that are dropping down? If I see one that I think I can do, I can reach back out to you and maybe we can team together. When you find the right John or Jane, they're going to say, sure. I do this all the time. People don't mind doing that. And so find your top vehicles, get on that notification list. And then the last one is be a PTAC client. The PTACs are funded, and now they're called Apex Accelerators, but it's too long for me. The PTACs are funded by you, the taxpayer, whether they're funded through DOB and the federal government, or they're funded by local sources or the colleges or the state government. It doesn't matter. They're funded by you, even though they're often no cost, but they have some really good services. And one of them is kind of like a GovWin type tool where they can track on opportunities or sources sought that fit for you, and you can get them to send that to you. And you can do a similar safe search where you're getting a daily email, but you want to also talk to your counselor on a regular basis, 5 minutes every 30 days. You just want to stay on their radar because they interact with federal buyers in their geographic area. And sometimes they'll hear about it. I've often been contacted by SBA, by an agency, or by PTAC counselors who are saying, hey, we're trying to reach out and find hub zones. Do you know any who'd be interested? After I get over the fact that they should be looking at DSBS, I say, sure, I know these 10 here. But make sure you build a relationship and go in and become a client. Don't just casually know your PTAC. They are there for you. They want you to succeed. Help them help you. All right, so those are some ideas on how to never miss a sources sought. The next thing is how to triage RFIs. And so you're going to get a lot of RFIs coming in, and I want you to focus on the RFIs and sources sought that align most to your business. You see this red box, I say, don't respond just because you can. There's a lot of people out there, and I don't know if you're this way, but who just respond like mad to everything. Well, when you do that, there's no focus in your activity. There's no focus in your effort. And you really want to tighten that focus down because you increase the likelihood of winning. So here are just 4 steps that I take to triage opportunities. First thing I put here is by agency. I just make sure it's in the agency of my choice. An example is I might see things that are in my core competency, but they're in a different agency, and that's taking me away from the agencies I want to be in. For example, I got a customer whose primary agencies are Commerce and Army. Then that's where we want to be looking, constantly looking for sources sought and RFIs in there. I did put in, and then I took out, I'll just tell you, sometimes you could triage if they're looking for security clearances. I took it out because that's kind of a capture question. If somebody says you must have a TS clearance, for example, that's not necessarily so. You can go back to them if you've got data and evidence. You can go back and get them to change that to secret, or even no clearance needed at all, right? It doesn't make sense if you're actually physically touching stuff, but I did this with software development where they wanted me to have top secret clearance for like 20 developers. And I said, how about I have one developer with a clearance who's on site? Everybody else develops it over here, and our code goes through an NSA scan, which it has to do anyways. And when the code is verified, then this person will deploy it into your environment. And they're like, oh my gosh, that saves us butts and seats. They don't have to have a space for them. Worked for everybody. Anyways, the second thing and the third thing kind of go together on triaging. I very quickly look at titles. And so if I go into SAM and I'm looking at a bunch of RFIs, I just scroll through the titles, and anyone that captures my mind, I just circle it really quick, whatever way you do that, right? And I go, that looks good enough for me to look at later, but I don't dig in. I don't even look at the description. I just keep going through. So if I got a bunch of something, I first go through the titles. Then I come back to the ones I circled and I look at the descriptions very fast, like 1 minute or less. I'm just trying to look at the basic description. Does it seem like it's aligning to what we do? And then the last thing I do is I try to align any tasks that they're describing. They might have a PWS or something. And so I'll look at that performance work statement or the scope of work and try to decide, do the task areas align to my core competencies? When you have that, then you triage it. And one of my rules about RFPs that go into your pipeline or RFIs like this is if you have to rationalize it, the answer is no. If you have to rationalize why this is so great for your company, then the answer is no. Get rid of it so you can go find the ones that truly are great for your company. So those are just some ideas on how to triage it. Let's dive into how to respond to RFIs. And I think this is kind of a big part of the meat. This first bullet, I probably should have put it at the bottom. I just didn't want it covered by my face on the screen. But I like this idea of submitting your RFI response early. If the response is due March 30th, then submit it March 20th or March 15th. Get in there. Like I said, you should be able to respond fairly quickly and have a good, compelling, convincing RFI response. Well, don't wait till the due date. Get it in early so that way, if the contracting officer or contract specialist is receiving it and passing it out, you're able to pass it downstream. Like, hey, instead of getting it all and then reading them all, maybe they're reading them as they go along. You can get in front of the program office in particular and begin to set the standards that all other responses are measured on. Like, I love taking an RFI response and saying, these are the things you need to watch out for. So then when any other response comes in their mind, they're like, I need to watch out for that thing, right? So submit your responses early. Second thing is, before you even respond to the RFI or submit questions or anything, the minute you see it, reach out to the points of contact and just say, hey, I wanted to express our interest and tell you our intent to respond. We will be responding. It's a marketing touch point. You just want to touch base with them. And by the way, don't even listen to anything that ever says we won't take a phone call or emails or any of that stuff. They will not sit there and put you on some bad list. And sometimes those comments are just left in there when they were like, oh, I don't care. Like, you can call us, right? You don't want to call and be and bug them, but reach out with a phone call first and then follow up with an email that says, we are just expressing our interest. They will actually appreciate the fact that you're letting them know. They might not respond, and it doesn't matter. You're on their radar. You're being polite and professional to give them a heads up that you're RSVPing to their party, if you will. Number 3, ask questions. And I say twice here. What I want you to do is, as soon as you get an RFI or sources saw it, it gives you a chance to ask questions. If you got any questions, submit them. Figure out some questions and submit them. I hear people all the time talking about trying to hold back on some of their questions. Just hold back on the really proprietary type questions. But other questions you can ask, get the government thinking about what they're doing. They see you as part of the collaborative process. Don't ask questions that are in the RFI. Like, literally don't go how many pages if it says it, right? What I'm looking for is, if you've got a technical type thing, have you thought about this instead of this? I just had a customer do an RFI response, and their RFI response is still not even due yet. So they already submitted it and asked questions. And in this case, the government answered the questions directly to them. I didn't even see them posted anywhere. And so sometimes that happens. But come up with really good questions that even before your RFI response is going in, you're having a dialogue with the government, even if it's basic dialogue, et cetera. They know that you're asking the right questions. You're demonstrating your subject matter expertise to the program office. If they're looking at it and having to answer the questions, they're like, I didn't even think about that. It's like, okay, that's what we're here to do. I'll give you a quick tip that I love. I did a while ago. It's this idea of, if you I did SharePoint, Microsoft SharePoint in my last company. And what I could say to a customer is, look, if SharePoint goes down, there's 5,000 companies that can help you bring it back up. But our difference is that we'll help you make sure it doesn't go down. We'll help you identify the possibilities of why it would go down and keep it from going down. Would you rather have it fixed or never go down, right? That kind of thing. And so you want to be demonstrating your expertise to the program office. All right, number 4, just address all aspects inside the RFI and the sources sought. Of course, they want that. And I call them ask. They're asking you for information. But even if you have to say no, if it's 10 pages, just use one page to say no to 3 tasks and use the rest of the pages for the 4 tasks that are your strengths. So just respond and say, hey, this task area, it's not a strength of ours. We'll work with a teammate, whatever. But make sure you're addressing in number 4, everything that's in there. That's a big deal. That's part of the compliance side of the business. Number 5, understand the agency you're going after. If an RFI or sources sought is coming down, a lot of us only see that opportunity. We don't understand that opportunity is actually a government requirement, and that requirement is part of a broader agency. What are the agency challenges and goals that might align to this government requirement that is coming out? Understand those and align your response to that. Number 6, I'm a big fan of using graphics. Almost every page, I like to have some sort of graphic. No one wants to read a page full of data. We are all social media hounds now. Even those of us who claim we don't use it much, we scroll, right? We go through our phone, whatever it is. Literally, my son's grandfather, I found out he's just going through looking at funny dog videos on Shorts. It's like, okay. And he's like in his 70s or something. I'm like, everybody is there. Nobody wants to just read this huge white paper. That was the old days. Now we want to consume data in a little bit of, faster, bullets, etc. And a graphic is awesome. I'm sorry, I can't tell you exactly who, but somebody put out a content. Hopefully she's here today, Sydney, on how to use graphics in your proposal responses. We'll do the same thing in RFI. Impress them. Use flow charts, process diagrams. Use relationship diagrams that help them see what you're writing down in your response. That will make them want to call you back. When you write just a ton of pages with a ton of words, it's not really even going to inspire them to read it, let alone call you back. Number 7, make suggestions that are, and number 8 can go together. Make suggestions and point out things that are missing. You missed this. We highly recommend you pay attention to this. Like one of the things that I would say in my SharePoint company that I had is when you're doing development, before you do anything, you really want to make sure you do an assessment of all mission critical applications that are homegrown, because there's all these ones about, and then there's all these other ones. Well, the way we do it is this, this, and this or something, right? And so I would lay it out. Make sure they're well thought out suggestions, but put those in. You want to shape the opportunity in your favor in an RFI and a source of sought response. And so put things in there. The number 8, the reason I really like that is it helps them go, oh, I hadn't thought of that. If you can get them to say, oh, I haven't thought of that, and you're the one who got them thinking about it, that's something that will get you in to talk to them more. So here's, I'm just tracking my time. I'm moving really fast. I understand that. But here's some tips on how to follow up after you respond to an RFI. First thing, just get a written confirmation. If you don't get it, reach back out and call them. This is why I like saying submit it early, even an RFP. Phone them and try to get a response in writing. The second thing is you just wrote an RFI response. Don't write RFI responses that you're not going to be relentlessly pursuing. You want to win it. So not unprofessionally, not aggressively, just relentlessly. You don't give up. Keep pursuing the agency you're trying to go after if you write a response. The third thing is continue to drop little snippets. If you're writing, like if I wrote something about SharePoint migrations, I might sit there and say, hey, by the way, Microsoft just dropped out these things, or here's 10 best practices that you might be interested in. I know they're interested in the work I do. And so if I can kind of keep dropping like LinkedIn type post information, it might go into the agency. They might look at it and it can get you pulled in. Number 4 is the SBA's Business Opportunity Specialist. If you're an 8A firm, make sure you let them know every time you respond to an RFI. Don't wait. Build that relationship with them and let them know so that they can help you. Number 5 is make sure you have a point of contact for the RFI program office, contract office, and small business office, because these are the people you're going to keep following up with. In all of those, number 6, you want to try to schedule an intro call. The RFI and the source of sought response is not the end. The government literally is in market research, so you want to try to get intro calls. Just remember, some will, some won't. No big deal, right? So 50% of the people will, but that's 50% that could lead to business. And then the last thing is every week, just track for 10 minutes. Just where are we on this? Who could I call this week to keep this opportunity moving forward? That's general capture guidance anyways. All right, so here's what I want you to remember from the training as I'm wrapping up. First thing is go watch a previous training. It was in this year recently where I teach about SAM and RFI and how to go in and set up saved searches, how to be able to see those RFIs and sources sought. So watch that training. The second thing is pick one RFI to respond to next week. Today's Friday, so to respond to next week. But figure out what you can go after and then begin to put these steps in place that I laid out. As you move forward and you follow a proven process on RFI and sources sought responses, you will find you're getting invited in to talk more. You will find that you're getting invited to bid more, and you'll find that you'll win some off of the RFI response alone. I'm a big fan of winning RFIs for the win, right? And I think you would be too. Okay, so I hope you found that valuable. If you're interested in my support, accelerating your company as you move forward on business development within federal agencies, we've got a BD Accelerator workshop for companies doing $1-2 million or more because it is an investment. But if you're interested in our help, you can do that. Otherwise, just keep watching the training. I put the how in there. For all of us, as we go into the end of our week, remember government contracting. It's not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.